agency responsible for issuing green cards and visas. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, also known as USCIS, is now adding special agents with law enforcement authorities to assist in immigration enforcement. Agency is bringing on roughly 200 of these agents to look for fraud in immigration applications and make arrests, as well as carry guns.
USCIS Director Joseph Edlow joins us now to discuss. Joseph, so great to have you with us this evening. Thank you very much. I'm hoping that you can tell us more about these 200 agents that are going to be recruited, because this is a kind of a change in what the department has traditionally done, which is really kind of a benefits agency, now turning into also an enforcement agency. How do you foresee really the inclusion of these 200 agents and the services that they'll provide to the agency?
Well, thanks so much for having me. First of all, I would say that this agency has always been a law enforcement agency. The act of adjudicating a green card or making the determination that someone's eligible for naturalization and citizenship is in and of itself an act of law enforcement. We've always had officers within fraud detection and national security units to go out there and find fraud. What this is doing is giving our officers an additional resource to really go after that fraud and to take these cases to their ultimate conclusion, which should be presentation for prosecution before U.S. attorneys' offices nationwide.
Okay, now we're talking not necessarily violent people, but as you said, fraudsters, and people want law enforced. I'm wondering if this is related to our next topic, which is the federal government resuming neighborhood checks for citizenship.
It's not really related to that. The neighborhood checks go to the citizenship integrity measures that we're looking at. A little known fact is that these neighborhood checks have been on the books since the 50s. They just haven't been used since the 90s. Instead, we've relied solely on database checks to determine base eligibility. We're still using database checks, but we're also going to be using social media screening, and we're going to resume these neighborhood checks so that we can get a sense of who people actually are. We want to know whether they are civic-minded. We want to know whether police visit their house but don't write reports. We want to know if they have anti-American activity that we need to consider. We just want to know who people are before they are given the ultimate right of becoming a U.S. citizen here in this country.
I grew up in Maryland, right outside of the District of Columbia. And so the idea of neighborhood checks is really not a novel concept to me, because I can't tell you how many times someone came knocking on my door to ask about a neighbor who applied for a security clearance.
Right.
It's like a civil servant who wanted to kind of access special privileges of their own office. And I would have to kind of offer my own account of the quality and nature of that person's character. So this doesn't seem to be too far of a stretch. We do it in kind of other kind of sectors of our community already, particularly in that area. I want to ask you about the naturalization test to become a citizen, Joseph, because I understand that you think that it's maybe too easy. Right now, the test requires passage of getting 6 questions right out of 10. I actually was quizzing James earlier in between breaks.
Okay.
Tell us, in our final minute here, how do we make it harder? Do we just require like a 10 out of 10 passage rate, or do the actual questions need to be more difficult?
I think it's a combination of a lot of factors. At the end of the day, what I want to do is make sure that we are fully complying with the statutory requirements for naturalization. So we do want to relook at that test. We want to see if there's a better way to administer that test. The questions do need to change to be a little bit more indicative of whether someone understands the rights and privileges of becoming a U.S. citizen. But also there's an English language component to this. The president has made it clear that English is the national language. Congress has made it clear that English language ability is a part of the naturalization test. Right now, reading a single sentence and writing a single sentence is insufficient to make that determination. And we've got to do better to make sure that we are really in compliance with the executive orders, but also with the congressional mandate that someone understands the language, understands what it means to be a citizen, and ultimately demonstrates an attachment to the Constitution of the United States.
Okay, Joseph, if anyone comes to ask Lydia about your background check, she's going to be tough but fair.
That's right.
We got to leave it there.
Great. Thanks so much.